Welcome to our second presidential plenary, Winning Hearts and Minds in Public Discourse in Places of Power. In our first plenary, we focused on what effective care systems look like across the life course. Today's plenary shifts the focus from design to traction, from what works to what wins. We turn to the question of how care becomes politically and culturally compelling, how it gains support with individuals, in public discourse, and among those who ultimately decide whether policies move forward or stall. We have three distinguished agents of change to help make sense of it all. I'm going to do very brief introductions. Please see the program for full bios. We have Lucía. Oh, here, let me advance the slides so you can see their pictures. We have Lucía Cirmi Obón. She's a feminist economist, activist, and served as Argentina's first national director of care policies. She is president of the civil association Futuros, Mejores para Argentina. Armine Yalnizyan is the Atkinson Fellow on the Future of Workers and a leading voice on Canada's economic scene. Her most recent work focuses on private equity's growing presence in the care economy. And David Smith is professor and co-director of the Gender and Work Initiative in the Johns Hopkins Carey School of Business. He is the co-author of the forthcoming book, out a couple of days from now, I think, Fair Share, How Men and Women Can Create a More Equitable Workplace Together. Please join me in welcoming them. So unlike yesterday, we're not starting out with a particularly hard question, although maybe selecting their example here was difficult. So I've asked each panelist to begin by telling us about their work as it relates to advancing a care agenda. We'll start with Lucía. What's one aspect of your work that you are particularly proud of?
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Jennifer, and the organization for the invitation. It's a pleasure for me to be here. I'm a feminist economist from Argentina. I've been working within research, activism, and public policy, always with the aim of reducing the inequality in my country, which is big. I did research on care leaves for LGBT families, financing care. I work in the Congress and in the Ministry of Economy. And in 2019, with some colleagues, we did this political platform related with a care system needed in Argentina. We presented to a center-left coalition that was presented to elections. They won, and they called me to run this agenda in the government as a first director and of the first Ministry of Gender in the country. We'll talk later what things we did and we couldn't. But in 2023, a far right-wing government won the election in Argentina. I don't know if you know him. Javier Milei is quite close to Donald Trump. And he dismantled the Ministry of Gender and the care policies as well. And since then, I've been reflecting on all the challenges that Latin American care policies face regarding scaling the policies, but also financing those policies. One thing I'm proud of, I would say, I'm proud of belonging to Argentinian feminist movement, which is a really big, popular, intersectional movement that has no just one leader, that gather every year in a different part of Argentina for the last 40 years. In the last 30 years, fought for having free abortion and legal abortion. This is this scarf is a symbol of that. And in 2020, we won that battle. Now we have that legal policy. But at the same time, in the global north, you were crying, me too. We were saying also, ni una menos, no one less, regarding gender-based violence. And it's also a cry that went spread through Latin America. And nowadays, I think that happens also in other countries. Many people are saying to us, you went too far, and that's why right-wing is governing. And we said, no, we didn't go far enough. In fact, what wasn't there was the rest of the progressive agenda. So that is what we are working on, because we want to apply this feminist transformative perspective even more in our country, but why not in the rest of the world? Thank you.
Thank you. Armine, same question.
Well, I'll start with what I'm proud of. I'm proud that I'm still standing. I have I have lost almost every fight that I have fought for since the 1980s, and I'm glad that I persevered as an economist working on the issues that face people, not the issues that face capital. And I'm glad that over the course of the last basically 40 years, I have learned polyvocality from people like you and my profession. I have learned to speak across cultures of the people that talk about financial capital and the people that talk about human capital, so that we can learn from one another and try and integrate our solutions in a way that actually makes us all better people. I have lost most of those battles, but I have won a couple of them in concert with feminists, in concert with other economists, and in concert with advocates. And the biggest one for me was that finally, after 50 years of asking for it, positioning childcare as a universal right, as something that would make us all better off, and an economic issue, because it emerged as a choke point in the wake of the pandemic in Canada, and being able to frame it in economic ways within the corridors of power. I mean, you called this the session that talks about the transition from what works to what wins. To be able to move it from what works to what wins means you have to speak in the language of the people who hold power. And being able to have that polyvocality that you have helped me achieve over 40 years of practicing my profession permitted us to be able to move these things across the line. We also failed, but I'll talk about that in a minute.
That's the next question. David, same question.
Yeah, for many of you know me, this is my second career. So my first career was in the United States Navy as a Navy pilot, where I spent 30 years on active duty. And the last part of that, the last third of it, I really spent in devoting to how can we change policy and bring research as an academic in the military, bring research to bear to really change policy, and was very much focused around things like getting equal parental leave for and getting to 12 weeks for men and women. One of the things that I'm pretty proud of that we were able to accomplish. We can talk more about that at some point, but also more recently in working with our federal advisory committees on women in the services around improving healthcare for women and access to healthcare, and to providing the training for primary care providers in a way that's never been there before for the women, because it's always been focused on men. Most of you who know me today also know that over the last 10, 15 years, I've really focused my work with my co-author, Brad Johnson, around engaging men as mentors and sponsors and allies, in creating gender equity broadly at home, but also in the workplace and our societies. And I think that's I think the book that put us kind of on the map a little bit was our second book, Good Guys, which came out in 2020, and really engaged men around this conversation about how do we show up in the workplace as allies, and what does that look like? Because I think a lot of us at that point, allyship had been around as a term for a while, but it wasn't really something that was really widespread and well known. And it was an opportunity we saw to really to lean into this conversation, and how can we make a difference as we're going through COVID. And at the time when we launched the book, to really engage men. And we started by thinking about how do we engage men to show up at home as allies, and what does that look like? And something we were very proud of, and really getting that conversation moving forward. We felt like we were making lots of headway. And of course, we can talk about where we are today with that as well. But thank you.
Thank you. So I'm going to start next question with Armine, and you started to hint on this a little bit, but I've asked our panelists to tell us about a moment when a care-related idea, campaign, or policy should have gained traction but didn't. What did you or others misread about the audience, the timing, the politics?
Everything's about politics in the end, because all of you know in this room that research is research. If you're actually aiming for the truth in what the facts are showing, and you've done pilot projects, you know what works and what doesn't work, what should be scaled up and what isn't scaled up. And the answer to why great programs that work don't get scaled up is politics. That is the beginning and the end of it. So the one example that I will point to in the interests of time, though I could give you about 15 of them, the one I will point out to is that though we got childcare across the line, the focus was on affordability for parents. The focus was on getting mom to work. The focus was on something that would pay for itself because we're subsidizing childcare. And so mom can get to work, so she'll work more, so she'll have more income taxes. It was based on the Quebec model. It was based on research. It was true. That's all we've done is focus on the cost. We did not focus on the quality. We did not focus on expanding access to childcare, which is desperately needed in this country. And we completely skipped over the fact that demographics means that this next cohort of preschoolers, which is going to be the smallest cohort in our history, is not being invested in. And as that population ages, if we do not invest everything we've got into them, we're going to be discounting an absolutely insupportable number of kids that are not school ready, that are not socialized in the right way, that don't learn how to be good humans with one another, and whose parents are just scrambling to meet the capitalist machine of making more money. There is nothing there about care in the way our care program for children is unfolding. And it is certainly not expanding. And that is a tragedy. Everything we know from science over the last 25, 30 years that we started learning with head first in the United States and continue to not learn and not want to know about is that if you invest early and invest often in human capital, everybody reaps rewards. The children that you have invested in reap rewards, their families reap rewards, and society reaps rewards, not just because these people are earning more, but they're costing less. They're having less altercations with the police. They're ending up in hospital less often. They're ending up in jail less often. It's a win-win. That's how it pays for itself. Plus, we're all happier because we're getting along better. Like, what's not to love about this policy? Why isn't it universal everywhere? And why isn't it focused on quality? Because the politics wouldn't let us chew and walk and chew gum at the same time. All we could talk about was affordability. So that's what we did. And now we're in a moment where the current administration that could make good on the promises of what this national program could have been is only interested in rolling out the red carpet for investments. And as an economist, an applied economist, the president of the Canadian Association of Business Economics, I understand what he's doing. We are looking at an unprovoked trade war, which may lead to a wave of disinvestment in this country. This may lead to not one, back to one recession of two back-to-back quarters of constraint, but years of economic decline if we do not invite investment in. But not all investment is good investment. Not all investment helps us create more care. We are going to need more public investment, and we are at a moment where that is the big fight right now. It is not just to expand care, but how we expand care and making sure it is publicly funded and publicly safeguarded for high quality and great jobs. That's our job right now. And that's what I've been focusing on the next while. I think that's the fight of our lives right now in Canada.
Thank you. Same question over to you, Dave. A time when you thought something should have worked, was going to work, and didn't.
There was a lot of enthusiasm when we started in 2020, focused on this idea of allyship and engaging men and doing this, and had so many companies reaching out to really bring us in to talk about it, and to go just beyond just doing keynotes, but to think about how do we do some training and some workshops and really get men into the trenches a little bit here to talk about this, and to do it. Hopefully they feel comfortable enough and safe enough in most cases to be able to have those conversations with women right in the room with them at the same time. And so we had a lot of that going on. I think we overestimated what the enthusiasm was all about, or where maybe the motivation was to bring us in to do these things. And as it turned out, in many cases, no surprise, there were some of this was very performative and making themselves look good to various stakeholders, right? Whether they were internal, external stakeholders in the company. But I think the other part of it was there was also two key issues, I think, with senior leaders. And one was many of them believed in it, but they were afraid to fully commit to it. And it was really hard to wrap our heads around what was really holding them back in many ways. And if it was at a risk averse, perspective, or was it something about a stakeholder that they really were concerned about? And in many cases, we found out that it was really, they were just fearful and afraid to come out kind of like very publicly to their company as senior leaders that this is something I believe in. And it's affected me personally or my family or people that I know, and to talk about it very authentically and in a very vulnerable way. And I think it was after we had a couple of CEOs who kind of opened up to us about that we really started focusing in on this idea that we've got to really work with them a little bit more on how they can begin to shape their own personal brand or narrative around this, and started kind of forcing the issue with, hey, if you're going to have a conference and you're going to bring us in as keynotes, I want the CEO on stage. And I want him to stand up there and tell everybody in the audience here why this is important to me. Not my company, but to me personally. Share that personal story that really connects to you. And I said, it's going to make all the difference in the world to the people out there because it's authentic. They know that you care. You're showing some humility and vulnerability in the moment, and it's going to make all the difference in the world. And for those senior leaders that we could get to do that, it really did. It made a difference there. The second part of that was really about trust and how do we. There was all these different trust divides within organizations, and the lack of accountability for senior leaders to do the work, and employees don't entrust their senior leaders, and then as we were going further back into the care conversation, trying to get leaders to, as we were thinking about shifting and changing practices, which is a lot of what we focus on in fair share and policies, was how come we can sit here and have this conversation? I mean, in the same way that you were talking about, right? I can talk about the economics of it. I can talk about the benefits of it, the win-win-win of all of these policies and practices that are related to care, but I can't get them actually to move and to do something about it. And what's holding them back? And a lot of times there's a trust factor there involved in trying to sort out where that is. And one of them, of course, within the company is that, the employers generally don't know what their caregiving population looks like because they're afraid to ask. They're afraid to ask because they think they're going to get sued or they're litigation of some kind. And so they don't understand their caregiver population in many ways. And then of course, employees are fearful because I don't want to divulge that I'm a caregiver, that I have a parent who's going through dementia and I'm having to care for them, because I feel like it's going to be held against me. I'm going to be they're going to withhold something from me, a promotion opportunity. And so we have this big divide out there that we're trying to really kind of, how do we bridge that gap? How do we close it so we can create trust and transparency, right, about what we're all about out there? And I think that was one of the things that we learned along the way that we were missing. We were misreading what this was really all about. And it's helped us to kind of think about that more about in finding solutions moving forward about, all right, we've got to address the transparency and the trust gap that we have today within our workplaces.
Thank you. Lucía, same question.
I'm going to share the experience of trying to pass a bill for a care system in Argentina while we were in government, because I think it relates to what they are saying. When we start in the National Direction of Care Policies, we had this plan of doing first a digital map of care spaces. We did it. A roundtable with ministries involved in care policies. We did it. We'll launch an awareness campaign to talk about this topic in different states. We did it too. And then to combine a drafting committee with experts to using all the participatory process before write down this bill, right? So the bill was called Cuidar en Igualdad, means caring in equality. And it proposed, on one hand, egalitarian, non-transferable, fully paid social security, finance leaves, and also leave for the self-employed people. And on the other hand, it proposed long-term care for the elderly, a salary for the community caregivers. That is a figure really important in Latin America, especially in the low-income neighborhoods. And also the commitment to invest one of each 10 Argentinian pesos of the budget of the Ministry of Infrastructure in care infrastructure. So there were many reasons why this was never treated in the parliament once we sent it in 2022. Some there were local, other contextual, and the last one is structural. And I think the last one is more something that can also happen in other countries. The local ones, well, by the time we sent the bill, the president and the vice president were not talking among each other anymore. So the coalition was in crisis. So it was impossible to make that happen. And really, so it was our deputies that didn't want to treat the bill in the Congress. We can talk later about the contextual thing, because I think 3 years later or 5 years later is different for Argentina to talk about these topics. But regarding the structural challenges that I think these kind of initiatives regarding care face all the time, and I found this in other countries as well. First, when you're trying to move forward with care policies, you are still explaining what care is, even to caregivers, and the ones should be in the front in the front side of this claim. They are still understanding why this is good for them. No. Then also, when you're trying to do like a care system that involves many care policies, also involves many different groups, right? And these groups have different things they want to achieve, and they are not necessarily aligned. For instance, the elderly group told to us we don't like to be in the same bill with early childhood, because every time we are like this, they don't pay attention to the elderly, they just pay attention to the children. The children group says, well, we don't like the familiarization concept you are bringing from the feminist movement. No. We want family there. The disability group say we don't like the care concept that much because it reminds us to the medical model of disability, and we're moving forward to the social model of disability. The housewife that in Argentina has a union, they say we don't like this paternity leave so extended because women are better taking care. We do want a salary for the housewives. But then the feminists say, no, but if we give them a salary right now, we are going to crystallize inequalities. And the same within labor unions. Domestic workers didn't want other care workers, especially the one that works with older people. They didn't want to be domestic workers, and the other one didn't want to create a new category, and like this and like this. So what some countries do to avoid all these tensions is to just pass a bill, a really broad bill, like just let's say that care is a human right and the government will work for that. And I understand that strategy. I would say that also Brazil and Paraguay just approved a law like this. Chile have, I can say that it's similar. But the risk of that is that after that, the care policies really happens. Well, it depends on the will of the government. And if you look what happened in the last year, looks like they end up being program of really low scale. So you are not committing universality when you are not putting this in the law. Am I clear what I'm saying? But then after you design this bill, then come all the cost and financing questions, right? Which is something that feminist economists, we were preparing for this for the last 10 years. We did all the calculations, right? Employment, all the impacts we have, the savings in the future, all the things like rationally arguments to convince. But then I found something that is risky, that we cost all the things that we should be covered in the future. And we never take into account the temporary dimension of that. because things look quite expensive. Of course, if you want to cover all the older people at once, it will be quite costly, but it won't happen overnight. You had to train people, you have to, especially in Latin America, convince families that end up just hiring a woman that is close to there, that they just assume that she knows how to take care and go and look for a trainee worker. Well, that takes a lot of time. But besides that, I found that in the Congress, everybody was asking all the time, but where the money will come from, you know? And for me, it was weird because I work in other policies before, not related with care. I then don't do that question all the time because many of the things that government do are just from general budget and mixed taxes, right? And I know there's many initiatives of creating new taxes to finance new policies, new care policies that sound good in a paper, but in reality, in politics, taking such two huge topics together, well, that's weird for a parliament, for instance. And I would say it's not needed because the government are already spending a lot of money in social policy, educational policy, and health policy without a care perspective. If they can reallocate and use this perspective and also reallocate resources from other spends, they can go forward with this agenda. But I think what really they are answering they are asking in the deep of this situation is that they are asking, okay, this is a sector, no, unpaid care work has subsidized the rest of the economy the last how many centuries? And now you're telling me that we have to internalize that cost? Is that possible? I think that's where they are asking at the end. And I think on top of that, there's no sense of urgency because politicians don't see there a flood, a crisis. They just see that, okay, care is a need, women are covering, and we just, we can wait, right? And plus, most of politicians are all men. So I think we had to be less naive with the strategies we give ourselves to make this agenda move forward, because it happens that this topic put us in a place where we're not educated to be, no? Go and fight for resources and discuss resources, and we have decades, if it's not centuries, being a part of that. So I think we had to be not only creative, but also understand that it's not just an academic issue. We had to think strategically if we want this to move forward and really transform our reality. Sorry, I went too far.
Thank you. So this was about barriers, but we're going to move on to potentially happier topic I've asked our panelists to tell us about a time something did move, a conversation shifted, a policy changed, funding appeared, and what seemed to be the decisive factor, like what tipped the balance in creating success. And Dave, we'll start with you.
I'm going to share two here because I think they're connected in different ways. But so the first was a really interesting one in the work that I did on this Federal Advisory Committee on Women in the Services. The committee that I chaired as part of that, the subcommittee, was focused on health and well-being, and we made a historic number of policy shifts and changes for the Department of Defense in 2024. A record number, I think it was like 36 policy shifts that we did. They were focused on women's healthcare specifically. The one that we could not get that just eluded us was around perimenopause and menopause, and funding the research for it, but also moving forward in practices around healthcare to begin to move that forward for. I mean, it's a broader societal issue, but it's also specific. The military has a even more challenging side of that. And it's interesting, the research topics we have each year have to be approved through the Secretary of Defense. This is in 2024 when we were having our topics approved, and we were actually able to get perimenopause and menopause on the list of topics that we were told to research for 25. Of course, that committee was disbanded in 25, and I have my letter from the Secretary of War. telling me to go home and thanks and no thanks for your service anymore. But so it was a disappointment. But it was really interesting though that there was this move in healthcare around care and healthcare focused on women in a really interesting area around for the military that I thought was really interesting, that I felt like there was something something was afoot that was going on, something in the zeitgeist out there that we're onto something here that is really resonating. Simultaneously in 24, you'll notice the theme here, uh, pre 25, that I want to borrow Ellen's phrase from yesterday, that suddenly with men, care was becoming cool. And I just love that idea that suddenly the conversations we were having with men around allyship, a lot of it came back to trying to figure out ways to solve some of the care challenges that they were personally experiencing, but also for their people, that they, as managers, as leaders, trying to solve some of these issues that they were facing. And they felt in some ways, I think, empowered to talk about care publicly out loud in ways that I've not seen men do that before. And again, I felt like there was something, a move, something was happening that allowed us to be able to do that. And we were able to, I feel like even today, despite the fact of where we are today in the socio-political context, that even there's still a lot of great conversations going on with men out there around care more broadly, and how men can be part of that solution. Because I think that men have finally been able to articulate in some places that they are caregivers too, and they want to do more of it, and they want to be better at it, and they want to be recognized and allowed to do it. So there's this demand signal that I think has been there. It just hasn't been very loud and visible in many ways, that now it's been out there. Maybe it's been squashed a little bit over the last year or so in really making it loud, but it's there. And I think it's something that we can latch on to for moving forward and really engaging men in this conversation. Because at the end of the day, if we think about gender equity in the workplace, it's great that we're advancing women in leadership, and I want that to happen. But at the same time, men have got to be able to lean into their roles as caregivers, right? It doesn't work if we can't all lean into the roles that we all have and be fully present in doing those. And so to me, there's something there that we're hoping we're going to latch on to and continue to think about some of the ways that we can do this within organizations. I would love to do it at a national level, but I've kind of put that behind me for a little while, to focus on things that I can control, maybe at a more organizational level.
Thank you. Armine, same question.
Yeah, I'm going to lean into the make care cool again, but also make feminism cool again, because it has become deeply uncool. But in Canada, in 2015, we elected a new prime minister who, when questioned why half his cabinet was female, said, because it's 2015. He declared his government the first feminist government of Canada. He had in his back room an absolutely virulent feminist who led a lot of policies after his chief of staff left. And so you had the setup, this tone from the top that you talked about, that you want CEOs. It's not just that men are participating as caregivers, but men are participating as leaders in framing the issues as something that touches us all, and that it's cool to be a feminist. How cool is that, right? It's no longer cool. The backlash is very, very, very accentuated in the form of the biggest wave of toxic masculinity I have seen in my entire life. So it's not a joke. The backlash to feminism is not a joke. So it's going to be very hard to put things on the agenda. But this is in answer to your question, how do you get things on the agenda? It depends on who's in charge and how they choose to lean into their power. And if you get a man or a woman, if you get a bank economist or a CEO of a company talking about the importance of being a whole human being, not just a worker, not just a productive element of your company, not just a generator of GDP and profit. If you get those people and enough of them in place, you create space for an opening. So there were two things that happened to make childcare possible. We had that set up at the federal level. We had an ear that was open to the argument that in the wake of the economy opening after we declared it was safe to reopen after the COVID, it wasn't after COVID, we still have COVID. It was safe to reopen the economy, that the choke point was not enough childcare. Too many women were working from home. Too much remote work was happening. Too many of the women who were working from home were unable to find childcare and unable to work. And like the penny dropped for an administration whose ear was already tuned to possibly hearing that. That would not happen today. The COVID could come and go, and we would never get the National Child Care Program. Guaranteed, right? In the Harper era, which preceded the because it's 2015, we would never get childcare in the wake of the 2008-9 recession. It depends on who's in power and how they use their power. And that's why we need both men and women to lean fully into their power, to make us more than just workers and more than just caregivers, but full human beings that have a complete spectrum of needs and contributions. We have both. We take and we give. And we need to be able to do both as fully as possible in an era of the biggest cohort of seniors that this world has ever seen, where we're going to need everybody that can contribute to their fullest extent. But for that to happen, you need to have administrators in the public and private spheres that understand the sea we're swimming in, and we just don't. People are talking about things like it's the 1990s. It is not the 1990s anymore, by the way, in case you're wondering.
Thank you, Armine. Lucía, same question to you. A time when something did move and what made it move?
I would say the experience with the Interministerial Roundtable did work. We did a lot of policies. And 1 year on working in the government and they call you for a roundtable, you say, oh no, another one, because it's something that you tend to think is not so important. But in care policies, it is important because the division of ministries doesn't match with the care needs. So they weren't thinking like that. So you need to put all these ministry together to think. And some of the policy we did from there, we built 300 free childcare education centers around the country. We create this subsidy for registering domestic worker, which is a really high informal sector, really racialized in Argentina. This subsidy was half of the salary for 6 months, went directly to the account, created a new account to the account of the domestic worker, so also bankarized her in a public bank, so nothing not necessarily sell there. With that program, we formalized 45,000 workers, which is a good number, but not enough. And we also achieved this pension recognition of years dedicated to care. You know that women don't match the requirements of the pension system worldwide because they were thought for the career of a man. And well, we just achieved 1 year per child. Of course, we need more, but this is something that we could do. And I would say, of course, we were missing this broader framework of the law that we didn't achieve, but this definitely made a difference. And the last point I would say that I'm also proud of is that the last months of government, we sent a request to the Inter-American Court of Human Rights to ask them if they think and they declare that care was or not a human right. And they took this request, they run this participatory process. And at the end of 2025, when we are not on government anymore, they declare care as a human right. And that's something that all the people in this room can use for advocacy or for political purpose if they want to make this agenda move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. So you've touched a bit, everyone's touched a bit about some recent shifts that have made the world and political leaders maybe a little less hospitable to a care agenda. But what broader shifts do you see happening beyond current governments that may be creating new openings for care and advancing a care agenda? And Armine, we'll start with you on that one.
Demographics. It's happening in every country around the world that had a baby boom after the Second World War. So this is something that is a sea that we are all swimming in, and we should be watching each other, looking over each other's shoulders. How are you dealing with it? How are you dealing with it? What's the debates going on? Every country is going to say how you're going to pay for it, right? Every country is having this conversation, so we can learn from one another about how that question is being answered in different places, because it is a slippery question. And I think it was you, but somebody said today, it's not a question that is asked of the war machine. It is not a question that is asked of, we need more infrastructure, physical infrastructure. It's not a question that is asked of, we need more investment in business. The question isn't, how are you going to pay for that? The question is only when it comes to care. And you're absolutely right. Even the definition of care is slippery because it's so diverse, it's so atomized, it is pitting different groups against different groups. So it is incredibly difficult to have a nice, cogent argument, but we can learn from one another, right? Because we're all going through the same thing. So I'm going to say one other thing about the trends that we're all going through. Because in a country like Canada, we are looking at somewhere between 28 and 32%, somewhere between 23 and 28% of the population being a senior in not very long. So let's just round it off to 1 in 4 people in Canada is going to be a senior in very short period of time. What do we know about seniors? We know that seniors live on fixed incomes that are lower than their earned incomes. We know that they have less consumer needs than they did when they were younger. We know that they have less money. It's more likely to be not easy to increase. They need less money, but they hate inflation. They don't like wage growth. And God help you if you tell them that they have to pay more taxes for the more public services that they're going to consume. So this is a political debate that the far right is going to pick up everywhere in the world. And the far right is ascendant everywhere in the world. I just came back from Berlin. It's like the AfD, which is literally the neo-Nazis. Literally, the neo-Nazis in Eastern Germany, they are ascendant in Eastern Germany. So this conversation that runs counter to what we are arguing for in this room is happening everywhere. Get ready for an incredible debate about taxation, because we are not going to be able to meet the needs of the future without paying more publicly. And if we think the private sector is going to do it, think again, because almost every one of these countries that had a baby boom introduced a version of publicly funded single payer care, except for the United States. Right? Almost everybody else has some version of single payer systems because there were market failures in the private system. And the AfD in Germany and MAGA in the United States and whatever his name is, that Nigel Farage character in the UK, like everywhere, they are arguing for less public when we need more public. So somebody asked today at one of the sessions, where did we ever come from this idea that the public only bungles things? It comes from 1980, Ronald Reagan. The most scary sentence you will ever hear is, I'm from the government, I'm here to help you. Between him and Margaret Thatcher was this entire 45-year grip on the public imagination that what we need is more market, less government. We are now firmly, because of demographics, in a moment where we need more government, less market. But it is going to be so difficult to change people's mental wallpaper in their head. And that is going to be a challenge for all, I'm going to say progressives, but for everybody that invites the world to be a better world, not just a harder world, right? It should not be just a progressive demand. It's like, this is the moment we're in. We either meet reality and talk about what we need as a people, or we don't. But I think we have a lot to learn from one another because of demographics and because of politics and because we are in for the fight of our lives for a decent quality of life for everybody.
Great answer. Dave, I'm going to step over to you. Same question. Where do you see openings?
So completely agree with you, Armine. On the demographics piece is huge, and we're already seeing that. And I think I think there's some glimmers of optimism I have. 'Cause I don't know. I'm always an eternal optimist in this. 'Cause the other side of this is just too too hard to deal with. But I think where I see it right now is thinking about, so with this aging population and again our workforce becoming much older as well, that it means that we're finding people who have more kinds of caregiving needs, right? Because now there, as you said, we're more likely to be caring for aging parents or aging family members, and many of us, much more today, increasing numbers of the sandwich generation of us, on both ends, caring for that. And so I think that with that comes, an opportunity to think about how the impact on those people is going to show up in the workplace, right? And so I think the response to that is what I'm looking for, right? How are employers looking at it? How are they going to respond? Is there a shift, going to be a shift here? Do we see a trend coming in terms of how they're thinking about, one, either benefits, and not just benefits, but also hopefully more about thinking about workplace structures, right? About how we think about work and everything from flex work to remote work to all the different ways that we think about how can we make work for everybody. And that includes, we've been focused a lot here, and me too, about this, about focusing on making work for women. But I think we have another conversation coming about how do we make work for the aging population. Because it's going to be, again, with the workforce shifting in that direction, there's going to be more people there. They're going to have different needs, and I don't think anybody's ready for that. And set up to how do we manage that part of the workforce in terms of meeting the needs so that they can actually show up at work and do the work that we need them to do and be productive and do the work that they want to do in the workplace. So I think that is a large part of that, and I see indicators that certainly in the U.S. side, recent shifts over the last few months in terms of NIH funding increases and calls for focus on elder care research. I'm like, what, really? And so just opportunities where it's like there's a buzz going right now amongst people working in kind of this healthcare and caregiving workforce area to hey, the door's opening, let's run through it while the opportunity's there. The other thing that I think has been a really interesting one, and people often ask kind of the flip side of this question of what's been your experience over the last year and a half, what's changed. And I go, well, there's not a lot of people want to talk to me anymore about, allyship or creating equity in the workplace or diversity, right? But what has become, I think, much more acceptable and interesting, and we do get a lot more opportunities to talk about, it has been care and caregiving. And so suddenly I kind of go back to, again, Ellen's quote yesterday of, care is becoming cool. Let's run with it, and let's keep that momentum going and use it, because there's lots of great work we can be doing. And I think that's one of the things that, in our center, it's been a new focus for us, is like we're really leaning into the caregiving research side of this, because there's an opportunity right now, and we see that it's something that not just our government but our employers are much more willing to embrace right now and are interested in and want to hear the research and want to understand best practice. So let's help them with that. Let's lean into that part of it. So I see it as an opportunity right now that we're leaning into.
Thank you. Lucía, shifts, openings you see.
First, something I forgot for the last question, can I?
Sure, go ahead.
No, maybe because it's interesting for some people in the audience. We also made this law or this norm that force companies with more than 100 employees to give solutions, childcare solutions for the workers with kids below 3 years old, because that's a gap where the public education is not covered in full. And we gave these two options. Placing a child care space in your space work, in your workspace, or give like a subsidy to your employees to go and hire. And everybody choose the second one. Non-company wanted to operate a childcare space in their work, of course. No one wanted to grab that responsibility. Going to the shifts, I see there are opportunities, of course, the demographic change, because if it wasn't desired before that all the care burden was on the shoulders of the family and especially of the women, in the future won't be possible either. And it's the first time people are really asking who will take care of them. But I see also the shift in labor as an opportunity in work, and the transformation with artificial intelligence. Of course, we have this idea that care work won't be that much transformed. We don't really know what's going on. It's an argument that we can use, but I'm thinking moving beyond that. I think what is going to happen is going to be really fast, and really we don't know what is going to happen, and it's too risky to go through that process without new tools of social protection or new tools of redistribution. And I think that when the social conversation goes on a sphere of redistribution, there's more space to talk about care needs, care policies, and care redistribution, not only in terms of time, but also in terms of resources. Because there were many times in history where also in progressive political projects, where everything was to be solved in the labor market, and that point of view doesn't give space to the care perspective. But I think the third shift that is the most important, that gives us an opportunity, is everywhere, and is the collective loneliness that everyone is feeling around the world. And I think we can present care as a political project against that, right? I think that that's a project not only for women, not only for children, for the elderly. It's a project, a proposal for the whole society to build better futures to the whole society, worldwide society. And while neoliberalism is telling you are on your own, from the feminist economists, we are saying we are all independent, right? Thank you.
Oh, thank you. That was wonderful. So we are right on time for audience Q&A. I can't believe that it's 5 o'clock. In my notes, it says 5 o'clock, audience Q&A. So we're to start Q&A. Steve has a microphone. If you'd like to ask a question, please raise your hand.
Hello, panel. Thank you for a great panel, and thank you for all your work. So when I've dealt with business leaders on these types of issues, the problem is fundamentally the costs are short-term and specific, and the benefits are long-term and diffuse, even though they're real. However, like, I just want to point out one notion for hope, and then I'd like you to address that. How do you deal with that? I haven't been able to figure that out. But like green energy in the United States, the political winds are against it, but solar and wind keeps winning because now the short-term costs are actually low. But we need to turn that corner on care and on the things we've been talking about here. So I would love to get your thoughts about the short-term cost, long-term gain conundrum that we're stuck in, it seems. Thanks.
And your name, Scott?
Oh, my name is Scott Beeson, professor at Fairleigh Dickinson University. Hi.
Good to see you.
I'll go. I just did a presentation to over 1,000 human resource people in downtown Toronto in April. And I made the case that the care shortage that exists in Canada, I can't speak for other nations, is now a business problem and an economic output problem. Let me spell it out for you. If you've got a growing number of staff that are distracted because they don't have the proper care for their kids, or they have to leave early because their kid is sick, or because they're sick and they haven't had a diagnosis come back, or they can't get treatment in time, or they're getting sicker and they don't know why they're sicker, or their parent is aging and they know they're not getting enough care in the long-term care facility and they can't get out there to feed their parent enough, or they're on a wait list for 3 years to get their parent when that happens multiple times in your workplace, it is no longer that individual worker's problem. It is your problem as a business. A distracted worker makes more errors. A distracted worker is late more often. A distracted worker is absent more often. A distracted worker and a burnt out worker, because they can't juggle all of these things, may quit. And what is the cost to you? You have to fix the errors. You have to find somebody to cover the no-shows. You have to recruit somebody new. You have to train the somebody new. Those costs are now lost output, lost productivity, lost output, lost revenue, lost profits. And you multiply that across millions of workplaces, and what you have is lost productivity throughout the economy and lost economic growth at a time when the economies are just kind of limping along at just over 1%. Why would you do that? So the actual shortage in care right now is a short-term problem, and filling that, meeting the excess supply, the chronic undersupply of, sorry, I didn't say that right, meeting the excess demand and filling the chronic undersupply of care would be an immediate economic boost to individual workplaces, because businesses can't control this environment, right? They can do nothing about this environment if governments don't produce enough care. So you're dealing with an economic shortfall that is a cost constraint in the short term. I completely agree with you that making the case for spending more money now publicly, where, it's in public health research, economists know there is a difficulty to do attribution versus contribution. You don't do it, and you don't have the counterfactual to show what you've lost down the road. But you do it, and you don't know if the results in income or earnings or revenues or whatever is a result of that one program or that suite of programs. So it's very difficult to say, we did this and it led to that. But we've got enough IMF research and we've got enough World Bank research to show that if you do not invest in health and education for your population, you have lower growth. You have more volatility of growth because you've got more inequality in access. So all of this to say, at a macro level, it's a harder argument than to make at the micro level that our shortfalls in care are now turning into a business productivity and economic performance problem. And if governments don't fix it, it means that some businesses will fail and others will not perform the way they could. Why are we doing this to ourselves?
Would anyone else like? Dave?
So a couple of things come to mind real quick is kind of, as I think about reducing, some of the short-term costs, and certainly there are plenty of opportunities. And to this day, I still can't figure out why, not because I don't necessarily agree with it, but with all these companies going back to their return to office policies. And Scott, and I think we've talked about this at some point, right? That it's like, okay, I don't agree with it, but if you want to make that easier and make it something where actually you're not fighting against people to come back to the office, but you actually want them to come back in the office, why don't you provide childcare on site? I mean, what a great opportunity to fix kind of two problems at once, if that's, if you agree with the returning to office part of it. But they haven't largely. That has not been the case in there. And the other side of this is I think that there's an opportunity, again, kind of putting the national part of this aside for just a minute, but at local government and state government levels, thinking about opportunities to incentivize employers to provide different levels of care, right? And there's all sorts of things that they could provide, right, to keep people, right, in their district, to keep them in their state, to keep them in their city, right, and to solve one of these problems, and to incentivize them to do. If you have these kinds of policies or practices available, you know, we're gonna give you a break on your taxes for the company, right, to be in the state or be in the city, right? There's ways to incentivize. Again, businesses, they think through dollar signs, right? And so there's a way to incentivize them to do it. And the last part of this, I think we're just starting to scratch the surface on, is really around technology. And certainly AI, you know, there's the whole realm of AI, of the goods, bads, and others out there. But I think there's room to explore with this, where technology like AI can actually create some very inexpensive options to support caregivers in different ways. And we can, you know, I think it's a baby steps movement going on right now with this, about how we can use it to support. We've been working on the mental load collaborative, and how we can use it to reduce mental load as part of that from a caregiver perspective. How we can help people who are doing elder care, especially for ADRD caregivers, right? Patients with that, it's hard to find the resources. It's hard to find, how do I do this? And how do I manage the care for this person I'm doing caregiving for, when I've got this really busy job, by the way, because I'm pretty senior at this point in my life and my career. And then how do I work with my siblings in handing off care, or handing off care to a paid caregiver for part-time? There's all these things that AI actually can be really good at and do that. And I think we're just starting to scratch the surface on what that looks like, and how do we get more of these health technology companies, these startups, engaged with us in understanding the research, and how we can work together to create really good products that solve lots of problems, and it doesn't necessarily cost a lot of money out there. So I think, again, there's an opportunity for where we can begin to solve, or at least start to solve, some of these with technology too.
Lucía?
Of course, I believe there's an issue with the system of indicators, that's too short term. But I think that all the shifts we were talking before also will force government to think in crossing budgets in the future. For instance, of course, pension system, the account won't close again. You will have to take resources from other side, and that can help you to be a little bit more creative with that for financing. And the last year, for the FFD4 that happens in Sevilla, UN declared that one of the things that you had to get finance for is care. So with the Gender and Trade Network, we explore all the financing sources that could be available. And we talk with the people working on climate change, right? Like, how do you get to get the businessman invest in these, I would say, green bonds, like this, bonos, obligaciones negociables, ¿está okay? And they say, well, because they were already seeing the risks. And I think now with the fall of fertility rate, they are already seeing it to some extent, because some of them say, well, but in the future of work, I won't need that much people as well. But what I'm seeing, at least in Argentina, is for the first time, men are talking about this. So they are in the prime time in the television, they start to talk about this. Now, what we need to do is bring the feminist solution to that, because they are talking without us. But I think a third problem there is not only this golden rule that all the investment in care is considered a spend and not an investment. That's a real problem. But also this idea that care economy is still on a satellite account. It's not inside the national account system. And that's something that you cannot change in your country, but it is important because the politicians are looking at that. The national account system, that the society, the media, and the politicians will evaluate them based on that. They are not looking at what's going on in the satellite account. I know last year there was a worldwide debate, and many of the experts of the care group within the UN, I saw some of them in this conference, so I would love to listen to them what happened. But I think that's an important discussion to take in the future. Otherwise, it will be impossible to make someone interested in the short run indicators economy invest on this.
Thank you. And in the interest of time, I'm going to ask you if you have a question to please accost our panelists at the reception. That'll be starting soon because I want to keep us to time. And I've asked our panelists to close with a quick lightning round answer of just a minute or two. Looking ahead, how should we make the case for care? Or what should we change about the way we've been making the case for care? And Lucía, we'll start with you.
I believe we shouldn't be thinking on it as a new agenda. It's a new way of looking at all problems that all societies wanted to transform. That applies to everything, the policies, the resources, everything. And I also think in the role of men there. And I think because that happens also in Argentina, no one wants to be on the spotlight because no one is perfect on that. The new men, the new role of men, it doesn't exist because no one wants to be there, right? So why not maybe navigating a more uncomfortable area of rethinking all our relationships that involve all men, all women, all identities too.
Armine?
I want to go back to David's idea about the trust divide and say that we have a moment to talk about how we can be the best people we can be. And that has to be an invitational thing, not a hectoring thing. Not here's the information, here's the research, here's the facts, right? If you don't understand what we're doing and if you don't do what we say you should do, you got it wrong. You wouldn't train a dog like that. You would not train a dog by saying bad boy. You would train a dog by saying good boy and then trying to get more of the behavior that you would like out of the audience that you are aiming at. And in every case we are talking about a public leaders audience. To get it at the scale we need, though there's some businesses that can be brought in, that's not going to fix things. We need it to be public. And so we need to be invitational to everybody we speak to, whether we agree with their politics or not, whether they're young or old. We need to be invitational that we all want to be the best we can be, both individually and as a society. That's what MAGA is about. Everybody wants to be great again. Everybody wants to be great. And that's an invitation, isn't it? So I think we need to learn from that invitational politics. And just to make sure I'm not forgetting anything. Oh yeah, the one thing I wanted to say about that is that there's a time dimension to invitations, right? So just because somebody doesn't jump when you say these things doesn't mean that you haven't caught their attention. That sometimes it takes a long time for people to change their minds. And they need to hear it over and over again, which is why I mentioned at the very beginning polyvocality. This invitation has to come from men and women, from business and childcare workers and unpaid caregivers. It has to come from everywhere. Please join me in making the best with what we've got, right? It has to come from everybody. And you can't stop asking. You know, you're not going to get it just because you asked for it once. Somebody once told me that social policy is not a drive-by shooting. You got to do it over and over and over again. And what I will say to you is, I'm not done. You're not done. We're not done. We're not done yet.
Thank you. Dave?
So I'm going to give you a macro and a micro. So on the macro side, going back to the employers and helping employers and employees close the gap here around trust and transparency about caregiving. And I think one of the things that we, at least in the United States, could do is start by treating caregiving just like we do healthcare. And that is have an open enrollment process where as an employee, I can anonymously sign up for the type of benefits and the things that I need. And my employer finds out, gets visibility, but they get it anonymous data through the data exchange. So it's just one way we could do it. It's scalable. It's an easy way to do that. On the micro side, I think one of the things that we learned early on in our work around allyship was that gender equity and certainly care starts at home. And if we're ever going to do this, we've got to start at home. And I firmly believe that, we could solve a lot of this in a generation, not 150 years from now, and creating gender equity in the workplace and at home, but in a generation, because we as caregivers of the next generation, those of you who are or will be or have raised the next generation, you are socializing them in what good looks like, and what better is, and what best looks like, and what the way that you want the world to look. And so this is the opportunity we have, and the research shows it. The research shows that, and I'm just going to speak from the men's side, just for the guys in the audience for just a minute, and for women, take it home to those guys that you care about, is that when men show up as allies at home and are visibly doing the work around care and the rest of it, the mental load and domestic responsibilities and everything else, it makes a difference in our kids. Our boys, when they leave the home and go into the workplace, they have, again, a much more balanced view of what gender roles look like and their expectations of that, and they take that in and they demand it in the workplace, right? This is that grassroots pressure they bring. And then for our girls, right, they have, again, this idea that, hey, I can be what I want to be, right? So I'm more likely to reach my career goals and dreams out there, persist in those careers that they want to have, and enter into those traditional professions and industries that have long been majority male. So if we're going to move things faster towards equalizing it, we got to start at home. And that means we all have to be doing that at home, not just moms, right? Dads have to show up, and we got to be there. And for any of the caregivers, and for those of us who get to do today in this new chapter of my life around being a grandparent, I get to do it with that next generation beyond that. So again, think about the next generation and how are we helping and showing them what good looks like.
Thank you. And please join me in thanking our panelists for this amazing discussion. We are now going to transition to the Cantor Awards ceremony. And at the end of the Cantor Awards ceremony, we will go back out onto the mezzanine for more food and drink. So please welcome Jeremy Reynolds, professor and associate director of the Purdue Center for Families and chair of the Rosabeth Moss Kanter Award for Excellence in Work and Family Research.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Jennifer, and thank you to Steve Sweet for helping arrange this part of today's events. I am the chair of the Rosabeth Moss Kanter Award for Excellence in Work Family Research, and I am just thrilled to be here today to celebrate the finalists for this award this year and announce the winner. Let me tell you a little bit about the award in case you don't know. It was created by Shelley McDermott Wadsworth, distinguished professor at Purdue University, more than 25 years ago. And the time was 1999, and Shelley looked around and she saw a problem. Work family researchers were sort of scattered across different disciplines with relatively little awareness of what we were all doing. And quality standards were hard to establish, and the field was sort of struggling to build on itself. And her answer was the creation of this award. She founded it through the Center for Families at Purdue University. And what the award is designed to do is to identify the best work-family research that's been published each year, and in doing so, try to raise the bar for the whole field. So the award bears the name of Rosabeth Moss Kanter of Harvard Business School. She is the former editor of the Harvard Business Review and a founding chair of Harvard's Advanced Leadership Initiative. She's the holder of 23 honorary degrees and the author of more books than some people have read. The book that matters most for this award is her 1977 book, Work and Family in the United States, It's arguably the book that helped launch the modern work-family field. And in that book, Dr. Kanter challenged the myth of separate worlds. She dismantled it systematically and asked, what responsibility do employers bear for what their workers carry home? And she called this a major social welfare issue of the decades to come. And that was 1977. We know she was not wrong. When Shelley called Rosabeth and asked her permission to name the award after her, Rosabeth really didn't have any particular reason to say yes. I mean, she was a luminary and didn't know Shelley. But she said yes anyway, and even came to present the award in the year 2000, the first award, and she returned for milestone anniversaries ever since then. And so this award began because of Rosabeth's groundbreaking research and Shelley's bold suggestion, and the trust between two academics. And so here is Rosabeth Moss Kanter and the book that sort of inspired Shelley to create this award. But the Kanter Award is only what it is today due to 25 years of hard work. And so far, the Kanter Award has honored over 450 articles, celebrated the work of more than 940 authors, and generated over 60,000 citations. And all of that work is now publicly available in a Zotero library that is free to download for anybody who would like to use it from the Purdue Center for Families website. I'd like to give a shout out to Shagun Sethi over here, who is also at Purdue, who helped make this possible. So this library contains all of the articles that have been honored by the Kanter Award over the year, and it represents the it represents the best work-family research published in the last 25 years. So if you're looking for a good place to start a comprehensive literature review or a syllabus or anything that might benefit from looking at some of this research, this is a nice place to start. Much of the work to develop the Kanter Award was done by Shelley McDermott, who described it as a labor of love. And she really said that she was thrilled to have the opportunity to celebrate great work and deliver good news and support people's careers. And serving as her co-chair for the last couple of years has been sort of an extended education for me, right? What I know about running the award, I really learned by watching her. And although Shelley has stepped back from the award, she remains a champion of this work, and I'm honored to carry it forward. Shelley is not here today. She is helping her son with childcare, and I think that is perhaps the greatest testament that she could give to the field of work-family research, that she would miss a conference about that to do that important work. Shelley, I hope we'll see this at some point. I think it's being live streamed and recorded and so forth. Shelley, we thank you. We hope you are enjoying every minute of your time away. And I invite you all to offer a round of applause for Shelley and her 25 years of dedication. There's Shelley. Shelley, however, would be the first person, I think, to say she didn't do all of this alone. First, there is a rotating team of reviewers. The process for this award is sort of unusual, and people don't submit their award or their work for this. We gather all of these reviewers and send them out to search for the best research. And the reviewers come from over 20 countries. They search more than 60 journals, which ends up being every year something like 5,000 articles that they comb through looking for the best stuff. The reviewers engage in multiple rounds of review, culminating in a final round that also involves input from corporate professionals, people in HR, for instance. And up here, you see a list of people who have been reviewers for this award for more than 10 years, sort of our reviewer Hall of Fame. So I would like to take this opportunity to thank all of them and anybody who has ever reviewed for this award. It depends on professionals who are willing to do the unglamorous work of reviewing all of these articles with care and rigor. So many thanks to them. This award has also prospered because of a fantastic partnership that Shelley established with the Center for Work and Family at Boston College. Led for a long time by Brad Harrington and later taken over by Jennifer Freyon, who's here with us today, so that's exciting. Jennifer played a really important role in helping develop the center's workforce roundtable, and that was sort of the group or the organization that helped us find corporate reviewers. And it created this crucial partnership. These roundtable members also helped support the award financially for many years. They helped evaluate the final papers, and they also helped spread the word about the things that they could draw from research that would be helpful when creating policies in the workplace that touched millions of employees and their families. So this partnership went on for many, many years. And I would like to take this opportunity to thank Jennifer for that partnership. On behalf of the Center for Families, I'd like to present you with what we call the Family Tree Award. This honor was created to recognize people who have brought families and communities together in lasting and meaningful ways. And the award is meant to be deeply symbolic. It's a framed print of the tree of life, a symbol of the growth that one person's dedication can generate. And Jennifer, through your partnership and your leadership, you have helped to nurture generations of growth. And so we have up here for you a tree of life that we would like to offer in thanks. I think Jennifer would like to say a few words.
Thank you so much, and thank you to Jeremy, to Shelley for so many years of mentorship through this process, and to Steve for inviting me to say a few words, just recognizing the impact that the Center for Work and Family has had. So the center existed for 35 years and served as a bridge builder between the worlds of academic research and corporate practice, facilitating conversations between those two worlds. And the Kanter Award was just one example of the ways that we did that. Another prominent example was the New Dad research that was pioneered by Professor Brad Harrington, who won the Lifetime Achievement Award yesterday, that really normalized men as equal caregivers and brought them into the work-life conversation. This then translated into policy change at the organizations where we worked and sponsored gender-neutral paid leave becoming the norm at many of those organizations. And so I'm really, it's a poignant moment to mark the center's closing after 35 years. And I truly believe that this work has left a gap in this space as the center closes, as connectors and translators of research. So I want to encourage you all to continue that important work, not only collecting the data and the narratives, but translating that so it can reach HR leaders and policymakers. I can tell you firsthand, those people are hungry for that information, the data and the stories that can help catalyze progress for employees and families around the world. And all of you within WFRN are in the best position to continue that impactful work. So thank you.
Okay, so on to the 2026 Kanter Award. I'd like to show you just very briefly the finalists for this award in alphabetical order. I encourage you to all go and read their research and the research of other articles that are listed on the website. So we have the first finalist, Seeing the Good in the Bad, by Konstantin Lagios and colleagues. Cognitive Labor, Power, and Patriarchal Bargains by Abigail Achenbach. Spoiled for Choice by Brandon Smith and colleagues. And number 4, Does Reducing Child Benefits Mean Parents Work More by Kitty Stewart and colleagues. And the 5th finalist, Why I Searched Alone by Tietian Yang and Hyo-Young Lee. So, and now, after a long wait and many hours of interacting with the many reviewers and the rounds of reviews and so forth, it's my honor to announce the 2026 winner of the Kanter Award. Here we go. Why I Searched Alone by Tiantian Li and Tiantian Yang and Hyo-Young Lee. So to the winners, the finalists, the nominees, the reviewers, this entire community, thank you all. It wouldn't be possible to do this award without you and your help. Every article this award recognizes really represents important insights into the lives of working families. And on behalf of the Center for Families at Purdue University, and with deep gratitude to the Boston College Center for Work and Family, congratulations to all, and thank you. And I hope you'll join us in celebrating with everyone at the reception just across the way here. So thank you.